And we are back again as we are in the 50s in our best of the best, looking at all of the 100 jersey numbers, if you will, in St. Louis sports history. Started at 0, we're going to end at 99, and we take some stops along the way to debate some of the numbers that have some pretty big names as we go along here. Joe Roderick, Bernie Miklasz here with you on STL Sports Central, where all content is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Yes.
And Bernie, today we're going to take a stop at the double nickel at 55, because here is an interesting trio of names that we have to look at. Currently, with the St. Louis Blues, you have Colton Parayko there at wearing number 55. You also have, from the 2000s in the St. Louis Cardinals, a beloved member of the St. Louis Cardinals, Skip Schumaker. And then you go back to the Rams when they weren't that great, but they still had some really good players. And a name that's a bit near and dear to me, James Laurinaitis, wore 55, playing middle linebacker for the Rams during his time here. So 3 guys to kind of pick apart and choose from as we try to figure out who is going to be named the best number 55 in St. Louis sports history.
Well, this one, I'm not going to say this one's easy, because I don't think it's easy. I would say, in all candor, as much as at the time that James Laurinaitis was here playing for the Rams, I really liked him, and I definitely respected him a lot. He was a good team leader. He had that great Ohio State pedigree, but he never made a Pro Bowl team or anything like that. I mean, he was the classic example of like a really good player on a really bad team, because by the time he got here, the Rams were already rigging the things to prepare for their move to LA, to try to you'd basically tank 5 seasons before they could go, to make it easier for them to get permission. So I would, shout out to James Laurinaitis, who I like a lot. Parayko, I'm going to ask you about him. I mean, Parayko was essential in that 2019 Stanley Cup championship. And then he really was a team in with Jay Bouwmeester. They were fantastic. And then his career hit a little bit of a lull, I think, is because of his back. He wasn't quite as good there for a little while, but I tell you what, the last couple seasons, Parayko's been outstanding. And his career, if it needed to be renewed or refreshed, if that's the way to put it, he is a standout defenseman. He is a number 1 defenseman. And again, he's piling up the games and miles in Blues history. So I have a lot of respect for Colton Parayko. Now, this one, Skip Schumaker is kind of hard to define in a way, because was he an all-star player? No. Did he win awards? No. Was he a guy that, finished in the voting for this or that? No. But, I covered all those teams, and Skip Schumaker was a really essential guy on those Cardinals teams. He came up in 2006, and what was his last year as a Cardinal? I think he played 8 seasons, and he eventually, he had a couple injuries. He eventually lost the second base job to Daniel Descalso. But if you look at Skip Schumaker, here is the one thing, well, first of all, he gave us the Rally Squirrel, right? That accounts for something, right?
He was a key part of the Rally Squirrel. Yes,
he was.
He was in the box.
All right. Well, I'll never forget this game as long as I live. I was sitting next to my dear late friend Rick Hummel. It was Game 5 in Philadelphia. It was Roy Halladay versus Chris Carpenter. The winner goes on to the NLCS. The loser goes home. And in the first inning of that game, against Roy Halladay, a Hall of Fame pitcher who once threw a perfect game in the postseason, and Roy Halladay was at the top of his game. Yeah. Rafael Furcal, he leads off with a triple to center. I remember being shocked that anybody got an extra base hit off Halladay. And then up next for the Cardinals was Skip Schumaker. And, it's a 2-2 pitch. Halladay's got him on the ropes because it's a 2-strike count. And Schumaker, he just rifles a double I think it was off the wall in right field. And he gave the Cardinals a 1-0 lead, 2 batters in the game. That was the only run scored in that game. And I mean, those two teams could have played on. Listen, Halladay wasn't going to come out of that game. Chris Carpenter, who was epic, he wasn't going to come out of that game. But Skip may not have won any awards and all that stuff. But man, during the Tony La Russa era, from 1996 through 2011, that was as big a hit as any Cardinal ever had. Because if he doesn't get that hit, who knows? There's a good chance. There's an even odds chance that the Cardinal season is over, because they didn't do a dang thing against Halladay the rest of the night. So
right.
He was Skip Schumaker was also very much a team leader. He also, La Russa came up with an idea, hey, we need you to play second base. He had never played second base before, so he took over second base for about a season and a half, and he was really good at it. And it's a guy that was revered by his teammates. And if you look at his leadership abilities, like at the time, I remember thinking, hey, this guy's going to be a really good major league coach, right? Well, he's more than that. I mean, it didn't happen in St. Louis, but of course, but he won the National League Manager of the Year award in 2023. And, he's going to be back in the dugout running a team soon. And he was Ollie Marmol's bench coach when the Cardinals won the division in 2022. So I don't know. If I had to vote, I would cast the vote for Schumaker, but I don't want to in any way denigrate or just kind of brush off Colton Parayko.
I will. So I had a chance to get to know James Laurinaitis through his dad when I did a podcast with him for about 5 years. And through that, got to meet up and talk with James an awful lot during those years. So grew to, not only, liked what I watched of him on the football field, but as a person, got to know him pretty well after that. And I just remember that time where we wanted to believe so hard that the Rams were going to turn things around when they got Chris Long in 2008, Laurinaitis in 2009, and then you get a franchise-changing quarterback in 2010. But little did we know, or I guess maybe we were just too naive to realize what really was going on behind the scenes at the time. It just didn't happen. And I think what it comes down to with these two, the other two in this, and Colton Parayko and Skip Schumaker, is that postseason performance and what they did bring to the team, and how the long, how they were there and did Parayko. It really has kind of, it seems like it snuck up on us. This is about to be his 10th, or I think it was his 10th year in the NHL. Made his debut 2015, 2016 season. I can remember when it was a big deal when they were bringing him up, this big, huge defenseman, Colton Parayko. And now it's been 10 years that he's been here, and still it's such a key part of the team. And as you mentioned, a resurgence this past year, even with the knee injury that he suffered. And with Skip Schumaker, you remember the postseason performances, but I do think that there was so much about it that with him, his willingness to change positions when he did, from being that outfielder, going and playing second base, and in a time now where this past year we saw how difficult it was for Jose Altuve to change positions the opposite way. But still, when you reach that level, you have played one position for so long that to ask a player to change that and learn everything around everything that goes into it, it's not easy. And Skip Schumaker ended up going on and playing that second base for multiple teams, even after he left St. Louis. So it wasn't just a, one franchise thing. He went on and played second for the Dodgers and, continued to make that, he continued to make those jumps in his career to stick with something that he learned at the major league level.
And a couple, you're absolutely right. Everything you say, you saw me nod, and I agree with you. What you said about Laurinaitis, what you said about Parayko. But I wanted to add a couple things about Schumaker, because I don't want to shortchange him either in terms of the scope of his career, because I forgot about this. And I called it up real quick because I wanted to make sure. It isn't that, well, first of all, Schumaker's got 2 World Series rings. Granted, he was a kind of a support player on the 06 team. He was a young guy, but he did come up. He did get about 60, 70 plate appearances, but he does have a World Series ring. But in 2011, here's what I forgot, Joe. That entire postseason that, of course, ended with them beating the Texas Rangers in Game 7 of the World Series, and after that incredible Game 6, Skip Schumaker hit 381 in that postseason. He was 8 for 21. He slugged 476. He drove in 4 runs. And in the Philadelphia series, and again, if the Cardinals don't get past the needless to say, the Phillies, and the Phillies were a pretty big favorite, because you remember them, they were runaway division winner. The Cardinals barely got into the playoffs. So everyone thought, boy, this is still the peak form Phillies team. Cardinals will be a tough out, but they'll get past them. Skip Schumaker in that series was 6 for 10 with 2 RBIs. So he had the massive RBI in the final game in that first inning for the only run in that game. But he did some damage elsewhere in that series. Looking at what he did against Philadelphia. So it wasn't just one moment. I mean, any dude that hits 381 with a 476 slugging percentage during a postseason run, that's pretty damn special, right? So I got to tip the cap to Skip.
Yeah. Colton Parayko postseason, by the way, he has played 89 postseason games with the St. Louis Blues. So not only 10 seasons in the league, a full season of postseason games as well for Colton Parayko. That's how long standing he has been here in St. Louis.
Yeah. I mean, you said something earlier. I remember when I was doing a show on 101 ESPN, and I remember there was in training camp, there was a buzz about this big defenseman, and I had Jeremy Rutherford on, and I said, who is this? Who is this Parayko? Who is this guy? And I'm making fun of myself for not knowing, but he had never been on the Blues before, but he was like an early camp sensation, and Jeremy Rutherford filled me in on it. And that was the first time I ever heard of him. And to be honest with you, it seems like that conversation was about 10 years ago rather than, what it really, really was. I mean, it just seemed like that happened a short time ago. I can't believe he's been in 89 postseason games for the Blues and hundreds and hundreds of regular season games. So I'll never forget that, hearing about him the first time. So I got to call JR and see who the heck this guy is. And he's been a great Blue. He has.
Yeah, it's another debate that I am more than happy to hand over to the listeners and watch the arguments in the chat and in the comment section and see who we are told should be the best number 55 in this list as we continue on. And Bernie, as I sit here and as we wrap it up, I know we always try to throw out some other names that we saw along the way and other 55s. I'm trying to think who else that would have been throughout the history of St. Louis sports that would have worn 55 for all the teams.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Maybe Randy Carricker would know, because Carricker will come up with guys, on a 1 second notice. But
Stephen Piscotty is one. I mean, Stephen Piscotty during his time in St. Louis wore 55,
right?
When he was here, but obviously not the credentials of the ones that we've named so far.
And I don't think if anybody wore 55 for the St. Louis Hawks, they weren't. They were not at the level of Schumaker and Parayko or even Laurinaitis. Right. So I think we're good. I think we're good with 55. If there's I tell you what, if we overlook someone major, we can tear this video up and start all over again. But I don't think we did.
I'll tell you what, we miss one, they let us know. And occasionally they'll also bring up a name from the past that'll just make you chuckle a little bit too. So
those are fun. Those are fun. Well, now, Joe, instead of as we record this is the last thing I'm doing today, work related, although this isn't work, this is fun. But now, see, instead of me getting in a recliner and kicking back, now I'm going to be like, I got to see if there's another 55 out there, so anyway.
Well, you know what? Next week, though, Bernie, when we do these videos, we're going to be in the 60s. And you said at the beginning that you refuse to allow us to put Richie Incognito at number 68. So you got a week to find somebody at 68.
Cannot do it. Cannot do it. As they would say in the South, I can't do that. I can't. So
well,
anyway.
we appreciate all of your input and all of our videos and all of our posts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Let us know who is the best 55 in St. Louis sports history. For Bernie Miklasz, I'm Joe Roderick. This is STL Sports Central, and we are powered by DraftKings. The crown is yours.